Okay, are we ready for me to start the stream? I just want to see if Israel can get sound. I guess I'll text him. Hold on 1 second, please. Bear with me 1 second. Israel.
All right.
Okay. All right, I'm going to share my screen so we can
Cannot
get
hear
your...
you.
Can you hear it? Israel?
Oh, wow.
Okay. Let's see here. Is everybody else able to, Jomei? Okay, so Jomei, you let me know when you want me to go forward. Oops.
And I'll actually start us out.
Okay.
Let me know when you're ready, Wendy.
Okay, 1 second. Let me just check with everybody. Okay, I've got a gallery view. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if you're ready? Okay, we're gonna work on Israel. He has no sound. I'm gonna start this and then I'm gonna work on him on the back end, okay? Let me go back here. Okay, Jomei, you can take it away.
Okay. Well,
Jim's going to start us.
Hello. Sorry, I can still not hear. And I'm on the phone, but the phone is not working either. Should I redial into the phone?
Yeah, if you can, yes. I think it sounds like your phone is too close.
yeah, if you've got the computer and the phone open, you need to mute one of them.
Let me redial in, but it hasn't worked so far.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Hey, Nelson.
Yes.
Hi, Wendy. Hi, Joanne.
While we're waiting for Israel, can I have a motion for the special board workshop?
So moved.
You have a second?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you.
What's going on here?
Since this is a special board, do we want to do the pledge now? Or do we want to do it at the next portion?
Sounds like a question for the president.
He's trying to dial in. Okay.
Thing is, he can't hear, so.
Yeah, we'll wait.
Trying to work that he can hear through my cell phone, so bear with us. He's also trying to call in.
Okay.
Go again, Iz.
I still cannot hear, Neil. I cannot hear anybody.
At the moment, no one's talking.
Me,
Hi,
that's
Israel.
that's happened to me.
Okay.
And unfortunately he can't hear me, but maybe he just needs to leave the meeting and then try again.
Okay. Israel, could you hear us say that?
Yes.
Nelson, I almost didn't recognize you. I don't think I saw you with your beard yet.
Yeah. Taking a break from shaving.
One of my boys is, well, actually 3 of them have a beard now. Andy's the only one without a beard.
Wow.
I know. Clayton doesn't have one either.
Well, it seems like Israel's talking a lot. We just can't hear him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
let's
he's talking to me.
see.
He's gonna log out and come back in. We're on the cell
Okay.
phone trying to work it out.
Okay, let me make sure Quan lets him back in 1 second.
Hey, Wendy, is there something Quan could do to check his settings?
I'm texting him right now. Let's see.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
We can hear
We
you.
can hear you now. Can you hear us?
Hold on, let me mute my phone and make sure it's not my phone. All right, can you hear me?
We're good. We can hear you.
Okay. You can hear us, Israel?
No, I'm not having any luck through the computer, guys.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
On the phone, but you
So
can
Israel,
hear me on the computer?
Israel, check your volume on the computer.
Yeah, I did, and it's up. Try
We
again.
can hear you.
Okay, let's get started. I can't hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I will get started. All righty. All right, Joe May, take it away.
Hey, Wendy? Am I on?
Everybody's on. Let's see.
Okay.
You can take it away. I'll
Okay,
navigate.
Joe
Okay.
May, let me start.
Okay.
Let me just introduce. I just want to start off just by saying that we've been lucky to work with LPA as they've helped us spearhead our facilities master plan throughout this year. It's definitely took a strange turn, to say the least, with the unprecedented COVID outbreak and school closure. And I want to welcome the team today, Jim, Rick, and Joe May, to share with the board the process to date with this facilities master plan, some of the next steps, and they'll provide us, the board, an opportunity to provide input and direction related to our facilities planning. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome the team from LPA. So thank you all for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Blake, very much. And Wendy, we'll just give you a sign or mention when we want to forward to the next slide. My name is Jim Kissel, a principal and director of school planning with LPA, and very pleased to be here tonight. Also on the call from LPA are Jomei Liao as our project manager for the facilities master plan, and Rick Musto as our managing director. If we can move to the next slide. The agenda that we'd like to review with the board tonight is just give an update on the FMP process that we've been going over going through for the past year, walk through some of the common themes that we noticed and arrived at through the facilities assessment, as well as the guiding principles in terms of the educational program and the facilities master plan overarching goals. Other district needs and program moves in terms of some of the other sites within the district. Then we want to walk through the first two campuses where we've got some questions, the Aviation site and the Aire site. Basically, we've arrived at the point within the facilities master plan that we've overlaid the facilities needs assessments and the educational specifications onto each of the campus diagrams. And before we go to the facilities master plan committee for their approval and voting on priorities within those diagrams, we'd like the board input on some of the thoughts that are in those sites, particularly the Aviation site and the Aire site. So we've got an activity where we can actually move all the components that are placed on those sites right now around with board input. And then following that, we'll go through the other elementary and middle school campuses and then talk about questions and next steps. And particularly the next steps is important when we think about how this process could go virtual. Right now, LPA is working on about 5 different master plans around the state, and we've been doing board workshops, we've been doing community town halls, and when FMPC prioritization meetings. So we've become pretty adept at how to still get that robust stakeholder input through the process. And so if we go to the next slide, Wendy. And the next one after this. So since we started the master plan about a year ago, just as a reminder, we've had about 9 planning committee meetings. We've had 5 facilities master plan committee meetings, 8 focus groups, 5 online surveys, 1 town hall, 5 one-on-one principal meetings, and 2 board updates. To the next slide. And that's totaled over 120 participants into the facilities master plan process. And now the next slide. So the schedule when we began this about a year ago started with in March to July of last year, we were really looking at information gathering. Then we were looking at the educational visioning and working with the facilities master plan committee from when everybody came back to school in the fall from August through January. And then we were getting to the point, and we had one of our town halls to release the site plans to the school sites in January. Our next step is really to begin thinking about how do we come back to the facilities master plan committee now that we've gotten input from the school sites into the site diagrams and getting today board input into the site diagrams. And what does that mean then in terms of the FMPC when they review those and talk about priorities? So we'll review some of the thoughts we have in terms of next steps at the end of the meeting. And then if you go to the next slide. And so the red dotted line is where we are today. So the last schedule is where we've been. Where we're going, I think, is something we'll talk about, and we want to constantly evolve as we are working in a virtual world now as opposed to in person. But upcoming activities that we have is the board input today into the site diagrams. Once we then finalize the diagrams, we'll do cost estimating for all the campuses, and then meet with the FMPC, which would be about 3 weeks from today. We want to make sure we have enough time to get publicity out to that committee regarding the meeting. And then we'd have a draft deliverable that we would bring forward to a board workshop, probably 2 weeks after that FMP number 5. And then following all the board input into the final master plan document, we would come back for another meeting where the board can adopt and or accept the master plan.
Hey, Jim, this is Roger.
Yes.
I've got just a comment there on that slide here with regards to the estimating. Just wanted to share a couple of things as you work to prepare the cost estimating. Just want to make sure that when we receive the final document that that there's clear allocations for soft costs. And
Yes.
Oftentimes in master plans, we don't see that portion. And then districts are surprised that they're 30% over budget from the get-go because soft costs weren't factored in. So I want to make sure that a couple of things. One, the soft costs are addressed, that we've got some district contingency allocations as well, because you never know where it'll go. But also the cost escalation. That's something that we, in terms of the getting to the midpoint of construction, that's something that this board also needs to talk about as to when we would potentially start these projects, because if we don't accurately forecast the midpoint of construction, we could be in a deficit here pretty quick. So if you can, as that develops, again, it's soft cost, district contingency, and midpoint of construction, if you could ensure that those 3 factors are captured when we receive the deliverable, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, great input. And we'll actually share all of that during the draft FMP workshop with the board. But generally, we factor in 25% soft costs. All the estimates will be in $2020 dollars. Now, the challenge is how do you forecast escalation when we don't necessarily know what projects are moving forward because we don't know what dollar amount we're prioritizing to in terms of the total need. And so one of our recommendations generally is, say you had $100 million available, I would never prioritize more than 2/3 of that, or $66 million of projects in 2020 dollars, because you need that other 1/3 for a program contingency, escalation, unknowns, offsite work, interim housing, and all those other things that would occur within a master plan. So we're very conservative, and we'll definitely share all that with the board at the draft FMP workshop.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide, Wendy. So right now I'll turn it over to Rick Musto.
Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm coming to you guys live from my garage office in Southern Orange County. This has been interesting the last few weeks. We've all been, as most everybody has been, we're working remotely, and I think we've been doing a decent job so far. Been interfacing in many different ways. So anyways, thanks for having us today. And we're going to back up a little bit. I'll just run through some of the things we've accomplished so far. When we engaged in a master plan, one of the first things we'd like to do is establish guiding principles. So everyone in the master planning committee understands kind of the higher goal of why we're all together. And when we started and kicked off defining the guiding principles, we really started with the district strategic plan pillars, which you can see in front of you. Well, I won't go through these. I know you're probably all know these by heart, but if you want to go to the next slide. We went from the strategic plan, then moving into what the guiding principles that would guide some of the decision making for the master plan. And we had a guiding principle that aligned with each one of the strategic plans. You can see the word bubble on the right to show you some of the things that came off in terms of all the correspondence as we developed the guiding principles, such as community, transparency, being practical, investable, the students, making sure that the master plan's compelling. So essentially we have the following 6 guiding principles, and I'll just hit the big pieces. Safety, making sure we provide, and these aren't in any particular order, these are just the 6 principles again. Safety, provide safe and welcoming school facilities for student and staff. Student, make sure the plan is student-centered and develops the whole child, which means create progressive, inspiring, inclusive, flexible, and relevant learning environments that are student-centered and meet the needs of all students. The plan should be future-ready, be transformative in how we think and reimagine spaces to be future-ready, and to better support and prepare the next generation of learners. The 4th principle was dealing with community and collaboration, and there was a lot of discussion around this. Community came up, as you can see, even in the word bubble, as a big item. And what we've kind of went back and forth a little bit on this particular one, but we all landed on this to be a true reflection of the long-term vision of the district stakeholders through an open, transparent, and collaborative engagement process by using clear community communication channels. So you can make that, the lot went into that one. And then the next one is make sure, as we talked about earlier with cost estimating, that the plan is financially strong. Let's see. Oops, there we go. Financial strength, be practical, implementable, and realistic plan that respects the use of community resources and takes incremental steps towards the greater goal of developing a sustainable facilities. And employment engagement as the last one, provide welcoming spaces that foster staff collaboration while also supporting employees with appropriate professional development. And unfortunately, it's a little bit cropped out there in terms of the last sentence of the employment engagement. But we can go on to the next slide. That was the guiding principles that were established. We, as the next step we did is we actually walked and took a look at all your facilities, looked at all your existing school sites, and looked at them from a needs perspective in terms of what needed to be repaired, what types of programs might be deficient. And we came up, we like to grade each of the sites on a scale of 0 to 3. And category 0 meaning they're in the best shape. They were newly built or had comprehensive modernization or good condition, and little to no work needed at this time. So Cabrillo Elementary School fell into that category, being your newest school. Category 1 is schools built, reconstructed, or received comprehensive modernization, mostly in condition, but may need some light modernization and minor improvements. And we believe that Anza Elementary and Dana fell into that category, Dana Middle. And then category 2, schools that received some minor modernization in the last 10 years. They're functioning condition, but need a full comprehensive modernization, meaning just the school bones are pretty good shape, but you need to come in and do modernization to all the interior spaces and maybe do some programmatic improvements. And we felt Burnett Elementary School came into that category. And then the final category 3, schools that have significant needs only receive minor cosmetic improvements and need comprehensive modernization and or replacement of existing buildings. And those are your oldest school sites, no surprise, but Aviation, 135th, and Aire Site. Are there any questions about those categories or any surprises at all? Or
Rick, I have a comment. This is Roger. In these categories, as you were walking through and making the assessment of the schools, did you factor in or take a look at our existing like HVAC and systems, or is it more structure, cosmetic? Like, for example, I'm talking about like the air handlers and infrastructure that back of the house stuff that people don't see. Is it a comprehensive review or more of the aesthetic and space need?
it's a fairly comprehensive review that we did, although we didn't go in with engineers and really look at each of the systems. We actually had meetings with their M&O staff, and we actually asked questions about each one of your systems. And if they felt the systems were manageable. So we did weigh in those conditions, but they were mainly from interviews. We didn't actually go survey every single unit and look at the life expectancy of that particular air handler unit, but we did look more of a global look at your campus, but it did involve asking those questions. And then these categories came out of those interviews with your own district staff and the M&O group and custodial staff as we walk the sites.
Okay.
If there are no more questions, we can go to the next slide. So just a quick overview based on those categories of what we learned by school. So Anza Elementary, just some of the minor things, repair, the NPR flooring and have some leaky roofs that needed some repair work, safety enhancements such as fencing and at the west side of the CDC and entry lobby, new flex lab and music space. So you can see that's a good example of we came up with some needs and they kind of filled in many different categories. Just the repair work category, safety, security, and programmatic needs that were all identified at Anza, but fairly minor. Then we get to Burnett, new administration building. That current one was beyond life expectancy, more CDC space, and reconfigure the library and Makerspace. For Cabrillo, they definitely wanted shade at the kinder, additional parking, and maybe some enhancements at the student squad, the student quad and Makerspace area. Dana Middle felt they could have benefited from a fitness room expansion, music room expansion, and Project Lead the Way.
So I just want to jump in and clarify that these were like after several master plan committee meetings, as well as the sites reviewing their draft proposed master plans. These are what they came up with as what they felt were the top 3 priorities for their sites.
Yeah, thanks. That's good clarification. So yeah, this essentially from the principals, correct? The principals went back with their own staff, and then these were their 3 priorities.
Rick, this is Nelson. I have a quick question, and it kind of follows up to Roger's comment. With regards to Anza Elementary School, if we looked at that school specifically for now, the leaky roofs, we know that school was built in 1998 or 99, I think, if I recollect correctly. So I think the lifespan on the roof maybe come into to it, basically its life here. So is that, I know right now it's a leaky roof, but in terms of the master plan, would that be, is that something you're considering in terms of like a replacement, or are you looking at it more from a maintenance standpoint? Would be the question.
Yeah, that's a good question. When we get to the next level of actually putting dollars to each of these components, we would put all the dollars it would take to fix the leaky roofs, in this case, do re-roofing. When we got to, in terms of identifying how to apply the cost to do that, the district could either apply their own maintenance funds to them, or it could come out of the bond. So we would want to understand that before we got too much further, but we would identify the cost to start with. Unless there was already dollars set aside and you're in the process of doing some repair work and it would be done prior to implementing any of the master plans, then we would probably make sure it's outside the scope of the master plan itself. But in the cost estimate, it would show the need for the new roofs. And it would be a matter of when we do all the cost estimating and we start evaluating the costs or the needs versus dollars available. Under dollars available, we would include some of your maintenance costs or deferred maintenance, if that be the case, if you're using those dollars to execute some of the work in the master plan.
So this is Joanne. So in terms of these various items that are priorities and needs, indeed, if they are priorities, have you ranked them in some way, or do you intend to do that? Because obviously dollars are not, endless. So we'd want that opinion as well, I think.
We are, I'll take that, Rick. We're actually asking each group within the facilities master plan that we've interact with to rank their priorities. And we'll be doing that with the FMPC as well in meeting number 5. The goal is basically to bring all those data points to the board and run scenarios that might reflect a potential implementation scenario based on those data points to help in board decision making. But the ultimate decision in terms of priorities would be the board's.
And it seems like safety, as well as like a leaky roof, would have priorities independent of what the committee members feel, right? I mean, it seems to me that there's some obvious priorities independent of a group discussion. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Joanne. I think that's where Roger's initial question was probably going. I think that from a we certainly want a priority, and I think life expectancy of systems would actually surface right to the top in terms of roofs and possibly mechanical systems that are nearing their life expectancy. We would certainly like to prioritize that as priority 1, if you will. So we would probably be looking for you to do that. And I certainly understand from a master planning that you guys probably haven't taken it to that next step, Jim and Rick and Joe May. So I think that was where probably Roger's question was started.
Sure. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yep,
I think
you'll see all those.
As an action item, as an action item for this, maybe Blake, if we can task you to take a look at that together with our M&O staff and LPA, it might need a little bit of a deeper site condition assessment to take a look at that. And we can have that as a component of the overall master plan, because that might there might be some larger capital costs, like for the systems that we may not have covered in, like, say, our maintenance fund, that we would need additional dollars for. So if we can look at that separate, that'd be great. And then obviously roll it into one plan.
Sure. We'll be able to show those dollars when we do the cost estimating component. All these maintenance elements will be included, and then you'll see that in some cases, if we're doing modernization to a building, it'll include all those repair dollars. It'll be a mod that would repair HVAC and electrical, or there'll be buildings where there's very little modernization, but we'll say, but they do need some upgrade to some mechanical systems or things like that. So there'll be different levels of modernization that we'll bring forward as scopes, and you'll have the opportunity to say these are high priorities or these are low priorities, or hopefully we'll have all the right data to put in front of you to make those decisions.
So when you give us estimates of cost related to these various options, do you have that sort of expertise in your company? Do you go out for bids? How do you come up with cost estimates?
Go ahead,
sorry,
Rick.
Jim, a call came in and I lost some of that question, so I didn't hear the whole question.
My question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, no, I don't need, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say we use HLCM as an outside cost estimator. They do probably 90% of our master plans, and we've developed a categorization spreadsheet with them that takes into account, and they can adjust for the construction costs within all the geo markets of California. So we'll be using an outside estimator's expertise that's in touch with the bid market.
Thank you.
Right. So just to finish this school site priorities, then there were just some global needs about technology upgrades, security systems, safety, flexible classroom, shared collaboration areas, outdoor learning spaces, makerspace and elective spaces. These are common themes that would be applicable to all your school sites. I think we can go to the next slide now.
Yep, go ahead.
Actually, we're going to move into
All right.
more detail now in terms of the program spaces, and Jill may walk you through the educational specifications that were developed.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Rick. Can you guys all hear me? Okay. These next few slides, just wanted to kind of share with you some common themes that came out of the Facilities Master Plan Committee workshops, in which some of that we've really focused on educational visioning, as in like vision for the next wave of facilities, right? Or how can we upgrade our existing facilities to better support learning in the future. So one of the ideas that came out of that was implementing shared collaboration areas amongst clusters of classrooms. That's like a zone that is a non-assigned space where it's shared amongst classrooms, where kids could be doing breakout activities or small group learning, or maybe one-on-one focused learning in those areas. And so you'll see that reflected on the master plans when we review them in a little bit. Next slide, please. We really talked a lot about like the involvement of the library and how that's going to be changing into more of a space that's more collaborative versus an area just to store books. Also, the transformation of the existing computer labs, where there's like rows of computers or just like tables and chairs and for laptops, into a more hands-on makerspace type of space for students, where there could be equipment or tools available to them, 3D printers, type of things that they could utilize in the future. So the library and the whole Makerspace STEAM STEM lab having that kind of adjacency and being a real true resource for all of the students. Next slide. A lot of the stakeholders really gravitate towards like outdoor learning spaces, and really taking advantage of good Southern California weather, and putting, it could be like furniture out there or seat walls, or just improving the landscaping area and creating areas where students can actually sit and learn or collaborate in the outdoors. So being more of an extension of the classroom space. Next slide. And then really making sure that all of the plans included dedicated spaces for a learning center, which really has to do with better supporting special needs students, as well as RSP areas, and then dedicated offices for our counselors and speech and psych offices, and IEP conference rooms, in which right now sometimes they're utilizing makeshift areas and like smaller closets spaces in the existing campuses. Next slide. Okay, so and some of these larger ideas that we really wanted to present to you today and really need your input is that these are some of the things that we really heard from the past Master Plan Committee meetings ideas. That's the first one is a centralized preschool. So really alleviating some of the classroom spaces on the existing elementary school campuses and pulling that into a centralized preschool to better serve the community, as well as freeing up some of the classroom spaces on those campuses for much needed like program or classroom space. Another program need a new specialized program school to support an immersion or project-based learning program. So, where would that go, and what site would that be best appropriate for? Also a space for Da Vinci Connect space, right? Like currently some of those programs are housed at the old Aviation site, and obviously some of them have moved to the Aire Site, and then what to do with that existing facility that is very run down. Was also, we heard about the play fields that the community out there thought that there was plans that the site, the aviation site, which is adjacent to Dana, that it would have could have potentially become playfields. And was that a promise to the community? And is that something that we still need to keep in mind and still deliver in this next phase? There was discussion about the M&O facility, whether that would stay where it is to alleviate space for playfields, or would that move to a different site, right? And then also the SLC Learning Center that's also currently on the aviation site, would that program move to open up space on that site for other programs, or would that stay where it is? And then these programs really affect the two Del Aire site and the aviation.
Jamay, there's a
site.
board question.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Excuse me. So I really feel it's important that the board have conversations about the playfields, the promise to the community. For example, when these promises were made, we didn't have an Anza soccer field. We didn't have a Cabrillo field as nice as it is today. We didn't have a lot of other options that exist today. And so I wanted the board to have a conversation about, okay, what is left of that promise and how much do we continue to have to fulfill? We were at some of these meetings where we heard about softball and baseball and of course soccer. And so we can't do it all. So we have to figure out, what are the things that we can do. Secondarily is the M&O facility for me. I personally have a real hard time having spent 1.2, 1.5 million on the facility and then knock it down and move it somewhere else and spend another couple $1 million on it. I have a real hard time with it. And I want the board to talk about that at length and not put something in this master plan that some of us are going to be extremely hesitant to want to happen. So I just want to make sure that we have those conversations today and not skip any of those parts.
From my end, I just wanted to clarify that I was not on the board when the board made that promise to the community about the playfields.
Okay.
Somebody was on the board.
And I would say the activity that we have coming up, we have actually all those components that we've tentatively placed in a draft plan on the sites, and Jamay will be able to actually remove them and move them around and everything else. So that's exactly the kind of discussion we're hoping for today, and input from the board.
And you really hit the nail on the head. Like, not all of it. We can't do all of it, and all of it's not going to fit on one site. Yeah. So that's exactly where we want that discussion to go today, for sure. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we'll go into the draft site master plan. So these are what was presented at the last facility master plan committee meeting. So this is just the existing Del Aire site, like you see. I mean, it has been updated. Like those classrooms are no longer vacant. The Da Vinci Connect program currently occupies utilizing those classroom spaces currently. Next slide, please. And the proposed site, we had originally what we were presenting, we had relocated the M&O Butler building over there onto that site to open that space on the other side. Obviously that can change depending on our discussions today. We also proposed putting in a new MPR, expanding the admin, and also adding the new kinder at the north side to turn this into a full school K through 5 or K through 6 school campus. And then that could be either for that immersion PBL program, or some of these components could come off and we could leave it as the site for the Da Vinci program as well. So that's up for discussion. Next slide, please.
Hold on.
Can we come back? Yeah.
Yeah, come back to that real quick. So
yeah,
you can explain where it says hard courts. I think, what is that space and what is the thought with that space? And then what about the fields? Are we not going to fix up those fields and make them a little bit more presentable?
So Israel, I think if I can add a little bit here before Jamay, you respond here. One of the thoughts that I had with regards to the fields That's also one of my concerns here. For, I want to say about 6 years or maybe even longer, maybe 10 years or so, we've been in conversations at one point or another with the LA County Rec and Parks to try to see if we could come up with an agreement where we could use the Del Aire baseball field that's just south of the field that you see here, so that we can do a joint use project. Those conversations have stalled out for a variety of reasons, one of them being the Park Preservation Act, where if we were to take certain recreation spaces, we would have to return or swap, if you will, other park space. So one of my thoughts here in reviewing this plan here, and I'm to your point, Israel, just staying on with the fields, one of my thought was potentially to convert that south or actually renovate that south baseball field or whatever it is right now. I think it was used for Little League, to convert that into, or in a master plan scenario, to convert that into an actual baseball field. If we had the dimensions to make it work, where it could be a joint use for Da Vinci baseball, as well as for the community and the Little Leagues. I think there could be a mutual benefit there. So my question would be is, can a full-size baseball field fit on that south field there, going into that hard court space that's in the brown?
Roger, you're mentioning a CIF, right?
Yes,
CIF.
for CIF baseball for the high school side. So it would be utilized for high school baseball and also for Little League, and I forget the divisions. Nelson, you can help me out there. I don't know if that's the Pony League or the bigger kids, if you will.
Yeah, I think you're talking Pony Colt and CIF.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can take a look at that. Yep.
The other item along the same lines that Roger just brought up, when you look at the tennis courts, which we're leasing to the county, just underneath there, there's also the gymnasium that I believe we're leasing to the county, and I'll let Blake interject a little bit. So I think those are also coming up, and I don't think those conversations have really gone anywhere with the county. So there comes a point here in time there could be a possibility that the district takes over those properties. And my only recommendation, I think I brought this up at one of the master planning meetings, is we may want to consider if we possibly do take over those pieces of property, the NPR is kind of stuck in the back there, that multi-purpose room. And I would recommend whether maybe we can convert the gym or have it more towards the front, that towards the community. I think the NPR might be better served in one of those areas. So possibly converting that gym, or possibly taking over a portion of those tennis courts and moving the NPR more towards the community, if you will.
Nelson, I could jump in too. I know we've had conversations about reaching out to the county, and haven't gotten to that yet, to be honest. It's something that we'll start taking on a little bit stronger over the next few months, especially as we lead into the summer. We could definitely communicate with the county and try and negotiate and bring back to the board some options and recommendations.
Okay. And then the only other comment I had, I'm not sure if the MNO location is best suited there. In other words, when you look at where Cabrillo is located, and when you look at Burnett and Dana and even the high school, kind of seems out of the way, but that may be our only option. But it's just something I raise as a question. I'm not sure the MNO that's the best location for us, but I don't have an answer on where. I couldn't tell you right now. I feel like right now where they're currently housed, it might be the best spot strategically from a location standpoint, but just something I raise as a question to our board.
Okay.
Hey, excuse me, Roger, I had a question going back to something you said. You mentioned something about a law that if you take space away from a park, you have to replace it in kind, I guess. Does that relate to the tennis courts and the gymnasium there in Del Aire, if we were to take them back?
I think it would not, because Weisburn owns those properties. It's not technically park property.
Okay.
I would say no, but the field that's just south of the existing is wholly owned by the
Right.
county. So that one would need a swap. But the others are technically Wiseman property. So I would say no to that, Joanne.
Okay, good, thanks.
Another question. When I see several new buildings here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the white portions, right? It's got the lunch shelter and the NPR. Those are all new buildings. Are those intended to serve all the programs that would potentially go on this site, or have more of a dedicated use? That's my first question.
Yeah, we can take a look at that. You know, I think there's some choices to be made. Like if this campus were to be utilized as the emergent school PBL, then it would make sense to add those additions on there to be able to convert this into an actual functioning full K through 6 campus, right? But then if it's just going to be utilized by DV Connect, then maybe doesn't make as much sense, and those pieces could come off, and then maybe those get maybe the full school is actually built on the aviation campus instead. So those are something we would need direction on, and we can kind of take a look and see how those pieces could fit on either of those sites. So it is an option, yes, but then it would just depend what kind of program would you see best fit for this particular site.
And I was going to say, oh, go ahead, Blake. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Jim. I was just going to say a little context to that too, is just the amount of input we received from the community, both at board meetings and at the master planning throughout the master planning process, to explore an immersion program, maybe 2 tracks, Mandarin program and or a Spanish program. So there was a push through this process to try and create a school, a stand-up school, a standalone school where we could potentially operate those programs.
And right now, Blake, which, I guess, orange classrooms or which spaces would be for that? I guess that's a question I have. What's the allocation of facilities to program? Like DV Connect right now has, I think, 8 or 9 classrooms. And then the full day preschool that we're planning on, where is that going? And is there any other space for what would be the space for the dual language immersion on here? I guess
we can take a look at that when we do the activity, and you can see the pieces a little bit more clearly maybe than on this map.
Okay.
Yeah, and this one, correct me, Joe May, this was for that other program site, whether it's an immersion or a PBL, and that those other functions were actually on the aviation site. So just in terms of logistics, once Joe May goes through both this campus and the aviation site in the PowerPoint, we're going to jump over to another program where Joe May actually has these as movable pieces, and we can move it all around with the board input.
Oh, God.
And I think that would certainly be helpful. Jim, I think at some point though, you know, Blake probably has a vision of what an idea that he probably needs to kind of share with us, so that we kind of have a good keen understanding of what we think, because obviously we've collected some of the input from the stakeholders in the community, but I'd like to kind of also like if you take a look at this Aire Site, is the vision is very straightforward. Is the vision a K6 standalone, or is the vision a K6 blended with DV Connect, right? So those kind of conversations, we probably need a little bit of guidance from Blake, because I think ultimately that's going to help you, Jim, and Rick and Joe May to kind of develop the plan. But we got to kind of understand that a little bit.
Yeah, understood. And I believe the DV Connect, they actually said they need all of these rooms.
All right, let's move
So
forward.
it'll be 16 rooms, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, next site or next slide. And then again, this is the aviation site. So the site that was the old Dana School next to the new Dana Middle School, the M&O you see at the bottom there. SLC, which is to the southwest corner there. And then above that is the whole DVR, DVX, and then DV Connect program up above. So in the next plan, this is what the proposed plan was that we presented in the last FMP committee meeting. So next slide. Is where we were placing the centralized preschool. That's about how much space it would take with a playground, and then also the addition of the classrooms and for the DV program, and then the SLC moving up to that location to fit the full-size soccer field, and that's how much space it would approximately take for regulation size.
Which
Field,
DV program are we speaking about?
I'm sorry,
Which DV program?
DVC, I believe.
This is no, this DV program that we're looking at here would be the Connect, yeah, right, the Da Vinci Connect program. So,
Connect program.
right.
The other two have already found alternate spaces.
I guess I don't understand what DV Connect program. Isn't it all going to the Aire Site?
The question would be, Roger, I think where we're sort of, as we start moving pieces around, would be determining where would be the best place to have a standalone school. So it kind of goes with what Nelson asked earlier. We were to do a K-5 or a TK-5 immersion program or project-based learning program or a combination of both. It would need a standalone K-5 program, 2 tracks, about 12 to 14 classrooms. So you'd either put those over at the Aire Site, or you could put those here. So it's almost interchangeable, but then there would need to be a place for potentially need to be a place for Connect as well. Either Connect would stay and the school could go here potentially, or Connect could move here and the school could go on the Aire Site.
Oh, so it's one or the other. This isn't
Right.
saying both sites.
Correct.
I understand.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, and like you can see, like the size of the 2 sites, you won't be able to fit both on the same site. Yeah. So if I could share screens real quick.
Okay, I'll stop share.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Let
Jomi.
me see if I can do this. So share, and then I just got to bring up. Oh. Okay. Do you see my screen?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I have the 2 sites up. So here's the Aire Site, and here's the Aviation Site.
And Jimmy,
And
do you want to
so-
start with the Aire Site, since the pieces there were a
Sure.
little bit simpler?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so we can kind of build this program. This is the existing site with the parking lot up to the north, and then all of the existing classrooms here in gray, and the existing admin building. So, we can kind of like turn on and off these pieces and kind of build the site here. So this is what I was showing in terms of like reconfiguring a new parking lot. Do we do an addition to the admin, add the kinder, the multi-purpose room, and then the M&O facility? Does it go here, or we could leave it at the other site? And then I think these are the site items here. And then you kind of wanted to see also, I heard that
A baseball
something
field.
about the regular size baseball field. So let me take this one over here, and I can place that here, and then you will see that
Oh, wow.
sure it could probably fit. However, it would probably take up quite a bit of space.
I would say that in doing that, just because it's so tight to the property lines, that you would be talking about some sort of netting situation to protect from foul balls, particularly with some of those other parking lots and other items adjacent, that we want to make sure that we aren't causing a safety hazard.
So do we know if this is the right dimension field, meaning that's the minimum size field for CIF?
That is correct.
Okay. Also on the M&O, I saw something where you had it in Cabrillo also. Is that still an option, or has that been removed?
Yes, we did have that presented at the last FNP meeting, but I'll have to say that when the principal came back she was saying that there were quite strong negative opinions about that being located adjacent to their site. So ultimately the decision is up to the board, but she was saying that there was a lot of objection to that location.
Yeah, you're talking about the M&O Butler building, right?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
Yeah, I don't think that's location wise, I don't think that's a good location either. I had a question, Joe May. This baseball field
Yeah.
here, obviously I see how it encroaches into the site here at Del Aire. It does not appear to be a good location for it. How does it fit with the aviation site? If we could we do a combo baseball soccer field?
So this is how much space it would take,
Can you
and
put it
you would
next to-
kind of have to remove M&O and the SLC.
Yeah.
But then if you did softball could fit with a soccer. Yeah, I would say that could be feasible. Yeah.
Joe May, put the baseball back up. And show the soccer going vertical, overlapping the field of the baseball, not the skinned infield, but just overlap.
Yeah, it'd be the other way.
Yeah,
Right.
turn it vertical and or even just slide it up vertically so it's off the skinned infield.
Oh, okay. Oh, I have it locked. Sorry, that's why. Okay, so you're saying like turn it 90?
Or no, just slide it vertically. Just
Oh.
slide it up
Oh.
till it's off the skinned
Off
infield.
the infield.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it.
So that's a traditional layout that we might do. You know, you can see how much land that it would take. You obviously could push that whole thing to the north and leave M&O down to the south, but it does take up quite a bit large portion of the property.
Yeah.
Folks,
lose
baseball doesn't make sense at all to take up this much space. It just doesn't make sense. We
Yeah,
need-
you would take up almost 2/3 of your site,
Yeah.
and then if you really wanted, you could probably still fit a preschool to the north. But
You know, at the last meeting that we had, Neil Goldman had a great idea. He was thinking that we would take the county library and convert that into the preschool, centralized preschool. I thought that was a great idea. Neil's silent. I don't know where he's at.
I see.
I'm just ignoring you, Nelson.
Well, Blake, I think we need to pursue the county solution on the baseball field more than ever. This is just too big of a space to give up.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mhm. And the other thing about the
Okay.
M&O at Del Aire is, you know, it's really far from 80% of the work. I've never been in favor of removing that so far away from, you know, 4 of our schools. It's
Joe May, can you shift the field here up just to that outside so that the M&O is not in the way there? What does that look
Yeah.
like? Does it go all the way
So
up?
shift the baseball or shift the soccer?
Well, I guess they would both move up at the. Yeah, they start with the
Okay.
baseball field. Essentially, it would probably convert this entire area into fields, right?
So do you want to keep the SLC intact or no?
Well, let's try it. I mean, because that would still need a home.
So if I shifted it up, then it would sit here right in the middle.
A little bit more, maybe. No, that's right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, a little bit more,
right.
Jimmy, to get it off the SLC. I would say there are some issues here just with the fencing and the netting that you would have to do. I'm not sure if this is the right orientation. I think baseball field generally wants to face northeast, so whatever northeast is. But your foul lines, you run a lot of risk with foul balls.
On aviation, that's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Mhm. Not a good idea at all. It's too big.
Yeah.
So what about the softball field in this location and the baseball field over at the Aire Site?
You could overlay the softball like Joe May was showing on the soccer. They very often will put two softball fields overlaid facing each other on a soccer field.
Great.
And then Jim, could you use, for instance, one of those softball fields? Could it be sort of a hybrid? I mean, right here we have a full, CIF sanctioned baseball field. Could the softball field also double as a little league, I don't know, majors or minors little league field?
We could check on that. It might be better pony league or things like that. Anybody who's going to really, tattoo the ball, we'd want to be a little bit careful with.
Yeah, my thought was that if we were doing a baseball field, it would be, regardless of the site, it would be CIF for CIF, but also the leagues could use it. And then in a similar vein, a softball field would also be CIF for girls sports.
Right.
So one of the fields would be at one site and the other one would be at the other one. So we would provide opportunities to boys and girls sports. It wouldn't, I would prefer to have both as opposed to one if we're doing fields.
Mm-hmm.
Joe May, could you just back on the other? I'm sorry, I don't just to because I don't think I saw this baseball field on the Aire site. Would the baseball field on the Aire site and that far, I guess it would be the northern field, could be converted essentially to maybe a softball field? That would work, right? I mean, just space wise.
Let me just copy this over. And
If I could interrupt a
flip
second.
this. Sure.
Roger or Blake, have we ever looked at overlaying a softball field on the Da Vinci soccer field? Does it fit?
Israel, I believe I talked to Vince, and I'm gonna get the dimensions wrong, but I believe it was a no. That for some reason, just by the way that soccer field was laid out, we're talking about the yet to be built soccer field, right? The space
Correct.
on, right?
So maybe if Joe May or someone could look at it for us, get the dimensions of that field and see if that softball field could work in conjunction there. That would make the most sense to do it on the Da Vinci campus. Just a thought.
That's a very good point, Israel. Blake, I recall when we were in construction, when we were trying to lay out for the Da Vinci site for the soccer field, we had to actually jog the fire lane to ensure that we can actually make the soccer field a CIF. So if the softball field doesn't fit like entirely within that soccer field, we probably don't have the space, because I know we had to make an adjustment to the fire lane. We had to jog it a little bit. Obviously, we got fire department approval for it, but we did have to jog that.
Okay.
You're talking about on this site, right? It looks like it will fit, right? And then you would still have a lane here.
No, I think Joe May, they're talking about our current Da Vinci High School, Eisburn High School site.
Yeah.
It's a totally separate
Okay.
site. We would have to, that would be something. You all didn't look at that site, so.
So Blake,
Okay.
I have a question here, just thinking outside the box, just because this baseball field seems to be problematic, and I'm not so confident with the county. A question I have is, could we potentially look at the Dana field, particularly the intersection there of, I guess, 135th and ISIS? Growing up, that used to be a pony field at one point. After after they moved the fields where Roger and Joanne bought, could we convert that into do we have the dimensions there to put a baseball field? We already have the light infrastructure, and right field, which would encroach probably into the Dana playground, could be what I would call a monster. You would put a monster fence as opposed to going out. Is that a possibility? I'm just wondering. I'm trying to see if we can utilize our existing field or land use, I guess.
I think that's a good idea, Nelson. I think that's worth looking at. There's plenty of space there, I believe.
Joe May, could you go to that site, the Dana site, and just put this field over there?
Yeah, Joe May, do you have that in InDesign?
And while you're doing that,
I
can
do.
we do a time check and be aware it's 5:07? And if we're going to get to more discussion, we kind of need to move it along, I think.
Yeah.
I guess
So you're
one of
talking about,
the things I would ask, are there any givens? Like, is it a given that the M&O has to stay in its current location, or are there items like that help to, through a process of elimination, help us to solve some of the issues under the overall vision that the district leadership has for the programs?
Well, I think that based on the current coronavirus situation, money will not flow as easily as it used to. The world as we know it is not the same. For me personally, to move the M&O and you know, kind of spend the money that we've spent on it and then do an additional $2+ million to build a new one, I just don't see it. I just think it's a huge amount of money lost and wasted just to move the M&O. When I don't think we will have the size bonds in the future that we were used to in the past. I think we have to be really, really aware of how difficult it's going to be to get the kind of dollars we used to get. People are kind of at a topped out at bond capacity, and they're not as excited to vote for it as in the past. So that's my 2 cents on that.
all right, you're saying those, they could fit the 2 softball, like you said. On Dana.
See, that baseball field just looks too big to me.
Yeah, that's one big baseball field.
Yeah, if you put the corner on the upper right-hand corner rotated,
Yeah, rotate it down this way.
rotate so that the
Counterclockwise.
Yeah,
upper right-hand corner. No, I'm talking about the baseball field. Sorry.
The baseball field, so it's in that upper right corner, Joe May,
yeah.
over on top of that softball, the same orientation. So flip it and mirror image it.
To the north.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
the
Oh.
baseball.
Put it on the
Oh, I
top.
thought you meant the softball.
Yeah,
No,
put the baseball at the top there over that softball field.
I think
Not-
you could leave the softball field the way it is today, which would be the bottom right-hand corner. Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and slide that to the left.
Sorry, I'm just gonna leave it. We're at that angle.
See, that field just is
Wow,
way
that's
too big.
huge.
Yeah, this is a CIF dimension. We pull this. This is a template that we use in the
Wow.
office. So
That is
I wouldn't
massive.
want to give you a false sense of, yeah, we can shrink it. This is a regulation field.
Wow.
I mean, do you know what the home plate to right field and center field is? Because that's just,
Yeah,
that looks way too big.
Was it like 360 feet or something like that, Joe? May?
Yeah, that's too big.
Or 300 feet?
I would think 300, 360 seems
300
really
feet.
big.
300 feet, I believe. Yeah.
That's 300 feet right there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. See, that's just
That's too big.
for us. Yeah.
Because then you're at what, 360 in the center field, so you're going out pretty far.
Yeah.
No, you don't want to go more than 300 center field. And I think you're down the line to be shorter, but
Right.
it's still too big.
Yeah, it's too big.
It's way too big.
Are you saying it's too big for the site, or it's the template's too big?
It's too big for the site.
Well, I
Okay.
hope the template is too big, but you're saying it's correct.
Yeah, I trust our
I mean-
templates.
I mean, seriously, when I've stood at this home plate and then you see the asphalt and then you see this is to the end of the asphalt, that's a long ways.
Yeah, but you can see from the softball that the softball is actually about the width of the green space. So to
Mhm.
see the relative size of that softball to the baseball, that's the right proportions.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I have a question on the big picture here, and that's our timing. Is this are we looking at a 2-year, 3-year plan? Are we looking at a 10, 15-year plan? That changes the conversation dramatically. And when we talk about safety, that's obviously things that are so urgent, they need to be done immediately. And that goes into what are our reserves, what is our maintenance fund, and what's available? Because I'm very concerned about any availability of funds in the short term.
Yeah, and then the roof would go into that as well. If we have a leak, we got to fix it. We can't wait.
And if we do that, does that exhaust our maintenance funds? And then does all of this become longer term, and that changes our perspective? The county, for example, is 2026. I imagine we could engage them in conversation sooner, but I don't know how interested they're going to be in a 6-year from now conversation at this point.
Yeah, more now than ever.
Yeah, we've had those conversations over the last, with Tom Johnstone and others and Chris Jones for 8 years, and it has gone nowhere. I mean, I think they lost interest with that. So
one question that I have, and it's more, I guess, a question for the board and Blake, you probably have a little bit more of the everyday pulse, but a little bit of the pulse that I've heard from the community is going to the Aviation 135th Street. The community, there is still a lot of people from the community that are remember the promise of the fields. And I know that is a concern. I kind of wanted to see where all my colleagues are, because it seems like there's still a lot of, and I think to your point, Israel, even more so now with the way things have changed, they may think there may not be the appetite to build more facilities. They may think that, they've invested a lot and built a lot of facilities and supported that. The question becomes is, at the end of the day, we're going to have to pass a bond. And will we be able to pass a bond if they feel that we didn't fulfill the promise? And that becomes a big question. What are you guys hearing? I don't know if Joanne, you've heard any feedback, or Roger or Israel, kind of from the community. I know that I've personally have spoken to Russell Kill, and he's kind of mentioned this, and he's someone that I have a lot of respect for and has sat on our bond oversight committee, and he's heard that from a few. Obviously with time things have changed, but I would look to see what are you hearing in the community, and maybe Blake, what are you hearing kind of from a everyday from people in general? Because at the end of the day, we're gonna have to go before the community, and we're ultimately gonna need to pass a bond. So
I could jump in just to give my insight. The pulse has been changing. I guess I would say that it's not changed. There's a good number, or a fair number of community members that want fields, and that have been that have voiced the need for fields and more fields, particularly on this Aviation 135th site. But the new dynamic, there's a kind of a new voice too that is looking at new program and or new school. Obviously, this is all pre-COVID and pre the new kind of normal. But and I could even defer to Eileen. She's heard some of these conversations, and definitely people that are looking at some program changes. And maybe not field as a priority. So,
and I think preschool, you're talking, Blake, I think if I'm right, you're talking about preschool and before and after school that, recently we've had a survey where we've received overwhelmingly response, probably larger than ever, right?
Well, if you think about the people that have come to board meetings in force with something on their minds that they really want us to hear, what's it been? It's been preschool and it's been sports.
Yeah.
Those are the two topics that have brought people in force to board meetings, I would say, over the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Some immersion as well.
Less of that, I think, but certainly preschool and sports.
A very difficult conversation, because half the folks that heard that promise are gone from our community, and we have, I'm just ballparking either 50% new community members. And it'd be interesting to talk to all those younger families and see what they really want from us. They're the future. They're the ones that are, the Harleys and everyone else. So their kids are growing out of what the parents want, right?
I thought we were doing a study about that sort of thing. Didn't we have some, or was that just?
We really need it, Joe. You're absolutely right, because you know, the new demographics are a different kind of family, and I don't know what their needs are. You know, kids in general are indoors more, and God, after this, who knows much more. So we really need to look at it from that perspective, and it's not that we don't uphold our promises, but we have added a lot of fields, and we just can't do everything. We already physically, we can't do baseball anywhere to CIF dimensions. We just can't.
So Israel, I would just mention one item, and maybe we could do a little bit of more further research on this one. But what I would say, because I'm kind of in the same way, I'm in the same position. Both of my boys are starting to grow out as well. But what I've heard from both Aviation and Weisburn Little League is that they have the highest enrollment ever in the history of Aviation Little League and Weisburn Little League. So, and we have plenty of soccer fields. I would agree with you, district-wide, but I think we do have a lack of baseball and softball fields. So that's something I think that we probably need to consider or think about.
As another data point for our LPA folks, did you get a sense from all these meetings from the community, any priorities on this conversation? Not the definitive, but another data point.
Rick or Jomei, you want to answer that? You might be muted.
Oh, here we go.
Go ahead.
I was
Rick,
going
are
to
you-
say that I did hear, you know, we talked about fields. There was people that I interacted with when we were going through some of the exercises was a strong desire to have fields, and it was baseball. At first we were thinking they really would appreciate soccer, and they said, no, we have plenty of soccer. We really need baseball. So that's what I kind of heard a couple different times walking through when we had the activities going on.
Right.
So a couple of comments on my end, and if we're looking at this, how we call it, this aviation site, I think we all agree we need to move forward at some point and demo all the existing structures. I mean, they've served their purpose and had a very useful life, and we need to move forward here. With the demolition project, the question becomes, what do we put in place of that? And I would agree that I think we have enough soccer fields, especially since we're going to be building at some point a new soccer field over at the Weisburn High School site as well. So we will be adding additional soccer fields. And I think a priority in terms of field use for me would be the incorporation of a softball and baseball field. Where we put those might be tight, but I think we could do it. I'm not opposed to a netting. In fact, I built one actually in partnership with LPA at Santiago Canyon College, where we did netting there. It's proved actually very effective. That's not without any risk, of course. But I think I would like to be in a position to give our community the opportunity for the little guys and gals, you know, to, as they're coming up in Little League, to actually have an opportunity to play these sports at the high school level, so that we don't lose students to neighboring school districts because they're looking for the sports and we don't offer it. I think baseball is a key part of the fabric here. I don't think that, I don't see that changing. I still see students, boys and girls playing both of those sports. If we can fit the, staying with the aviation site here, if we can move that softball field a little bit north, do a combination there so that we wouldn't have to move the M&O and the SLC, I would prefer that over all these other buildings on this site, and move some of those other buildings or construction over to the Aire site that we're talking about, because I have heard it quite a bit that there was a promise in terms of the fields. And actually, I think our district has also evolved with the need for this softball and baseball, because we didn't have a high school. So to me, I think this is a logical progression to build these fields, whether it was promised or not. I think for me, I look at it as a good next step.
I agree with you, Roger. I think despite the fact that the community has changed in terms of its composition, we have a lot of young families, perhaps younger than we used to over time. Given the enrollment for the Little Leagues, clearly there's interest. And these are the very young families where the interest is demonstrated. So it's still there.
From my perspective,
We
irrespective.
can make it work. I'm all for it, but we got to find a place to put that field.
Well, maybe we do softball in a smaller version. Maybe we don't do the pony field. That's clearly gigantic. There must be some compromise
But
there.
that's what the high school needs, though.
Yeah, they need CIF.
And we've got a sport and rec division within LPA, another one of our practices, and we can have one of the people from our sport and rec take a look at, it is big, but is it feasible and reasonable? And they could answer that question very easily for us in terms of what would be required. And could you compromise some in the field area or shape or things like that and still have, in essence, a CIF field?
Because Jim, the beauty of baseball, from my understanding, is there's certain criteria to dimensions, but each baseball field has sort of a personality of its own. And so there may be some wiggle room that we have, even if it's on that Aire site. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there to maybe shorten up some of the what do they call them? Foul lines or maybe the center field. I don't know.
Maybe
Yeah.
we need a green monster like they do
Yeah.
have in Boston.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. But I'm not sure myself what those things are that are flexible, and so I think we could get more feedback from the district by talking to our sport and rec expert.
And Jim, I think the risk is less with foul balls and things like that. I think we still have to do some sort of a netting thing, but if we were to put the baseball field, say, over at the Aire site, there's no traffic. I mean, there is parking over on the what is that? The west side. There's definitely traffic there, but on the south side, it's a park.
This
Yeah,
seems
no.
to make more sense to me.
Are you talking about putting it here or the field below it, or getting
I think they're talking about here.
retaking the field view?
Right there.
I would
Oh,
say here because
okay.
I'm not, Joanne, I'm not
Yeah.
holding my breath with the county. Obviously, I
Mm.
think the preference would be to do it where at the park and then do some sort of a JPA agreement. But I just know that, I've been part of those conversations with in the past, with Chris and Tom, and the county really lost interest. It was like, we'll get to it and we'll look at it. And I just don't see it happening until our lease is up, maybe 8 years from now, where we have to force a conversation or not that we can force the county. I'm not saying that, but where we're taking over our portions of it and how that interrelates to a future 99-year lease. I don't know. I think that would be a really long period of time. I'm talking like many years probably to get an agreement to put it at the park site. But I do think that'd probably be the ideal location, because then we would both benefit. So I'm not saying no to that. I just, having gone down that, we didn't meet with too much success on it.
So
Yeah,
if I may, one other
I mean,
thing.
looks
Thank
like
you,
it'll fit
everyone.
here.
We do need to move forward, so let's wrap it up.
And I have a comment.
Last thing here, guys, that
I have a
just
quick-
want to make sure we're not forgetting, and that is, yes, I agree with Roger. If we could do it on the public side, it makes more sense. But if we don't do it at the Aire site, we are compromising the ability on the aviation site to have an immersion school. You can't do both. So I think we need to remember
Right.
that. If we do this, remember, we had a choice between where DV Connect and a possible immersion school go between the two sites. If we put baseball and aviation, we don't have that option anymore.
Right, then it
And I
would
think it either
fit
has to be
probably better
there
here.
or on the public
Yeah.
side, to leave our options open.
Is it, Jamea, am I following that conversation? Is that me? Because if I'm looking at the Aire site, the baseball and softball there leave enough space for Connect? Was that the
still leave
immersion
the
program?
space for Connect.
Yeah,
Um,
particularly if
if
the
you
M&O
want-
wasn't there.
Yeah,
So
Connect,
if
I
it's just
understand usually
Connect,
12
they
sites,
would-
12 of those rooms, and 4 are our preschool program with a new program just to the north of that, a new building just to the north of that. So it's already there.
So what I
yeah,
like.
it's already there, so they would take all these spaces, yes.
So what I like about this plan is it allows us, and I think kind of Israel alluded to this earlier, it allows us to use our field use here. If we can make this, I'm not keen on the NPR being kind of hidden back here. I've always said I would prefer it to have it here. And I don't think that I would see a NPR in the near future. I think that would be a longer term. So that could work better with the timing of the county negotiations. And then this would allow us to keep the M&O Butler building in its existing location, which I think is a better location personally for M&O staff to serve the schools. So if you take the NPR away and you also take the Butler building, then maybe this could work.
Correct. So then if we take the NPR away, then maybe the site functions more for just the DV Connect, and then we wouldn't, I mean, you tell me, but we probably wouldn't do all of these new building additions, right? And we would just leave the site
And
the
you
way
leave
it
that,
is.
and you leave
Yeah.
that back area as hard courts, that's not
Right, this
occupied
would
by
be
the
hard
fields.
court.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then
and
when
we
the
would just
gym
leave
comes,
it.
when the gym comes back in the future, that
that
could be
would-
an NPR.
Yeah, I
But-
think the NPR
Correct.
could be either it could be a portion of the tennis courts, or it could be the gym conversion or something like that.
Yeah.
Or it could go here if you don't have the kinder ad, right? You could put the NPR up here. I mean, I don't know if DV Connect needs an NPR, but they could just utilize the gym maybe as
Right.
part of the thing, and then you could just build your immersion school on this campus and
And the
we
preschool,
could
and
try to fit
you
the
actually have more
preschool,
land.
Yeah.
Because if you leave the
Yeah.
SLC down below and the M&O, you've still got some
Right.
room between them and the new school. That could be some fields or hard courts for that specialized program. So it actually gives you more
Right.
land if all the fields are over at Del Aire. And that's just more of a field for the school here at this site.
All right, guys, 20 minutes, just giving a time update.
Yeah, so maybe the next step is for, I think now we definitely have some good ideas, and I think we probably just need to collectively as a board and with Blake and some of the staff, maybe just get together and give you some more direction. But I think we're getting a little closer now, because I think if we can utilize our existing land and facilities, that's going to help us down the road.
Mhm.
And we'll
Yeah,
provide
that's
you some
we'll have you-
information in terms of what our sport and rec says about, the fields working, the baseball field working, and that is truly feasible. I want to make sure that whatever's in the master plan, that it can indeed be built. And so we'll get some answers for you on that as well.
Yeah, and I think, Jim, I think if we were to utilize the fields like at the Del Aire site, I think that allows more flexibility here, right, on the Aviation 135th.
For sure.
Yeah, you have a lot of land now, so that for
So
all
these
those
would all
programs.
fit. And then this could be the field for the school, or the community could use that as well, and then M&O and SLC would stay where they are. And so you wouldn't have to move those at all.
I really
And
like the idea of
other
the fields at
scenario,
the
the
Del Aire
SLC
site too. I think
Yeah.
that's really smart, a good use of the land.
Mhm.
So is the idea not to put in the soccer field at all and put in more buildings in that middle section?
Right. This would just be an open, this could still be fields, but it might not
Well, John,
like the
Jermaine, turn on the
regulation size.
turn on the soccer field, Jermaine, because if we
Yeah, I have
condense
the soccer
that
field. It's on.
campus, if we condense the campus a little bit, just slide it south, it's a little tight, but we're close to fitting a soccer field. And the soccer field, more than anything, is fudgeable in terms of its dimensions.
Right, because this doesn't have to be specific for a competitive sport or something like that.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because you have other,
we have
other
the-
soccer field, like you have the high school and.
If Da Vinci gets
so
theirs
it's-
built, we'll have one. Mhm.
It's just become flexible green space at that point.
Yeah.
Exactly. Flexible screen, flex field, and kids could play soccer on it, or
Perhaps a walking track for us.
yeah, you could walk around, or exercise stations.
Park course, whatever.
I mean, we need to keep in mind too, the visibility of that space at Aviation and 135th. That has huge visibility. And we should put it to good use to show a good face for Weisburn also. I mean, I think we need to think about what we're showing, not just to our community, but to the larger group of folks that drive by that area all the time.
Mhm.
And I like the idea of having a combined sort of building and green space use of that field. Because
Yeah.
when you drive by it now, it just looks old and tired, right?
Aviation
Yeah.
agree with you.
billboard freeway for sure.
Well, and that corner parking lot doesn't excite me either. So
Exactly.
it's just not exciting. Yeah. And
Yeah.
of course, my thought also is you don't want big entrances off Aviation. It's a high
No.
speed
Right, the
street,
traffic.
and you want most of your driveways to be off 135th and make it
Mhm.
safe as
Mhm.
possible. Yeah.
And we still want to be a good neighbor to the people on 135th. So, I mean, they put up with a lot with the traffic for Dana and stuff already. So,
But yeah, I
Yeah,
think
this was like originally when I was trying to zone the different areas, because this is more, this would be more park entry and, you know, community visitors. And this was more for the school or drop off and pick up and going to the admin. But
Yeah,
yeah,
there-
but
there's
now we
plenty-
know that this is M&O.
yeah,
different.
with plenty of land there, I think there's a way to maybe even combine the drop off and parking with the adjacent middle school, and come up there off north off 133, which then really opens up, you know, putting some of your buildings all along the street edge. So I think there's some things we can do now
yeah,
that we
I
have
don't
better
think we could
parameters.
have drop off and parking at that corner. It
Yeah.
looks suicidal to me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would love to expand that Dana parking lot and make
Could switch it.
where the preschool is. I would make that the parking lot.
Right.
Yeah, we'd
Yeah,
basically
and
go
I
back
could
to the
shift
drawing.
this over to the corner and put
Mhm,
the
mhm.
parking drop off here. Mhm.
Yeah.
And Joanne, I do like your idea of making this area more of a blend of a combination of field and buildings. So if that
I
means,
mean, we could even shift this closer to the field so it could be more community use, like, I don't know, like the NPR.
right, and don't be, what I would say is don't limit yourself if maybe if we need to perhaps make one of the buildings a 2-story that gives us a little bit more green space or that blend, and I
Yeah.
think we could be open to it.
That's what we are showing here. So this would be a classroom and lower grades classroom with library, and then upper floors would be like the 3rd through 5th grade
Okay.
up here.
So I do like the blend idea of buildings and field here.
I mean, if we're going to go to the trouble and the expense of creating this space and really doing something with it, we want to make it a showplace too, not just a drive-by. And if that doesn't have to cost more, it just means we do it smarter.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Yep.
So
I
in
think-
the instance where the preschool and and the purple here, I guess that's the NPR, when they go here at the aviation site, what happens at the Aire site? That new building over there doesn't get built? That's no longer needed because now we're splitting up the preschool with DV Connect. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, that would just be
Right,
DV
the
Connect.
preschool would be here, and this would just be DV Connect only. And then in the future, if the gym comes back, then they would be able to utilize that larger space. Yeah, so then you wouldn't have to build 2 NPRs unless you're saying that you would build an NPR for DV Connect specifically.
Joe, I think the clarity is coming in where you see right now, if you look at the southernmost, I can't use the mouse, but the northernmost 4 rooms, the CR at those 4 rooms are currently going to be used for a preschool, and then a modular building just to the north of that, where the K-Play, basically where that shed is essentially, is going to serve as a preschool. So I think Roger's question was, are we separating that out? Is that right? Is that what you were saying, Roger?
Right, because now I guess we would start off in the interim with the preschool here, and then the master plan view, we'd be building a new permanent facility over at the aviation site here.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this looks like actually, in my view, a pretty good compromise in the sense that we're still adding fields at this location, just not to the extent, meaning not the entire area, but we're saving monies on not relocating the M&O, not relocating the SLC, adding a field here, utilizing the land really to our best of our maximizing the use of existing land by adding some of the structures or buildings that we would be adding somewhere anyway, but it would really
Mhm.
would be less expensive because we're not tearing out all these other areas and we're adding fields. Well, maybe not adding, but certainly renovating and repurposing existing fields over here. Thank you for switching to that, Joe May, because right now those fields are in terrible shape. I think anybody would agree. I mean, you walk the site, I mean, we have water issues, irrigation issues. I mean, holes are all over. I mean, it's just not they're not good fields. I mean, they're in desperate need of a repair. So I think we are adding new fields and renovating them possibly, but at multiple sites as opposed to one condensed site.
And that way you have the fields away from a lot of traffic, you know,
Mhm.
you're in a contained space. And I think it's a lot better to have the buildings and the use, especially as Israel was saying, to keep the M&O centrally located rather than to bury that in the back somewhere. I think it's a much better use of space. I like this a lot.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree.
I
We're
agree.
on the same page here.
Joe,
And
can
I
I
think
ask for one? I'm sorry, Nelson, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
Sure.
If you went
Switch
back to
over.
that, I'm just curious, back at that other, yes, at that site there. So I noticed those classrooms, I think that's 8 classrooms to the right, to the east. Is that off or is that going, or were you what were you doing with
No,
those?
this is the second floor of this building.
Oh,
So
sorry.
there's
Okay. Thank you.
four
All right.
classrooms in the library, and
I
then
see.
8 up
Okay.
above. Yep.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
A couple
And
questions
just
here.
so I'm clear, this was for the preschool and the dual language immersion.
Yep. The preschool's up here, and then
Oh, and the
dual
bottom
language
ones-
immersion PBO.
Okay, I got it now.
A couple
Okay.
questions,
And-
one on this site and then back on the Del Air, but stay here for a minute. Question for you, Mary. I think Mary's with us. Is the SLC sufficient long-term in its current configuration?
You know
Well,
what?
I mean,
Oh,
we
sorry.
added, if you recall, I'm looking at the drawing with the portable restroom and the
Me
two
too.
facilities. It looks like they've been added in. I mean, at this time, unless that was the kind of the agreement, the maximum capacity we wanted to provide. So I mean, I look to Dave, we're always constantly looking at the fiscal implications, but an 18 to 22-year-old program and a middle school and a high school program is something that we are going to need moving forward. So is that your question, Neil?
Well, I'm just, here we're talking about funding a field. We like what we're doing, but I want to be realistic that the current facilities are meeting our needs into the future, because this is all in the future.
Correct. And I think with the additional of the portables and the portable restroom being dropped, that was my vision moving forward for the next 5 to 10 years. With those 2 additions, we've made those additions to move forward. I like the configuration. I think it lends flexibility administratively and support wise.
All right.
You're saying
great.
this footprint here, Mary, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
I just want to understand.
I was trying to imagine the sport fields in addition to SLC, and I think for traffic flow, for sport use, for all, I'm looking at the double 2-story. I think that's it. This looks like I'm in agreement. I like this configuration the best of all of the options.
Can we go back to Del Air for a moment and question about the viability, and I guess this might be for your sports group, of flexible fencing, because obviously these are overlapping each other.
Mhm.
And also it seems natural that we're creating green space on the field for what's currently Da Vinci site. But whoever's there, can part of the field be used for field? Just, green space.
For recreation for students during
Yeah.
recess.
Oh, absolutely.
I would
Yeah.
think so. Yeah, we've done
Yeah.
schools like that. Yeah, for sure.
You
So
could
Joe May,
expand
Rick,
green-
I mean, just out of curiosity, what's the popularity of say, just if we're looking at five years down the road, turning these fields, doing the synthetic? I know Capistrano, is it Capistrano, or I'm sorry, forgetting the name of the school down south that actually made a synthetic baseball field, basically top to bottom. Are those becoming more
El Rancho?
popular, and would you recommend that?
We're actually seeing a lot of districts as they begin coming around the second round of synthetics, that they're doing their baseball field as synthetic. If we do the baseball field with a Title IX issue, you probably want to look at the softball field as well and do both those facilities.
Is this room for seating too? When you put this out, are we accounting for seating or any type of spectators with these fields?
We would have to look at that. I don't see it drawn on there right now. Yeah. Yeah, usually it's in the sidelines, but the dugouts and some seating. Yeah.
On the south
Yeah, this
side,
wouldn't
yes.
allow for too much of this of seating, but we'd have to just push the field around a little bit and take a look. There's a lot of amenities that goes with a baseball field that you'd have to look at, bullpens and some, you can go with batting cages, and depending on how many things you want to add to this field, it would impact the orientation or the site, the location of the foul lines and all that. So there's a lot of options and choices to make with a baseball field. I was just going to say, so we are doing brand new fields, softball and baseball, and based on the sports, they elected to go synthetic on the baseball, but it makes sense to do synthetic on softball. They didn't feel that was a Title IX issue as long as both fields had access to the same amenities in terms of if one field got lighting, both would have to have lighting and both would have the same amenities for batting cages, but they wouldn't necessarily both need to be synthetic, I guess.
We would want them both to be synthetic though. If we
You wouldn't know, but I don't know too many softball fields where they like synthetic. Baseball is starting to go that direction, but at least from what I've seen.
yeah, if it's baseball only, grass holds up fine. It's the soccer that destroys it.
Right.
Oh, and so we know that soccer is going to use it. We might as well make it synthetic if we can afford it, of course.
Now we have overlapping.
We're done with this. Could we
Yeah.
go back to the 135th and Aviation site?
Yep.
So I wanted to comment on Mary's SLC. We do want to plan for those temporary buildings to be permanent buildings. So part of the plan should be to replace those at some point, because the life of the portables won't be what we want. So I just want to
I
mention.
think to that point too, Israel, I think the existing SLC where it says SLC there, that was the old
Needs to be
district.
replaced as well, yes.
You're not in good shape either.
It's given a
That's
lot of
outlived
life.
its life.
It's given
Yeah,
a lot
that
of
one
life,
is-
but yeah.
I think it's 100 years old if I'm not mistaken.
And guys,
So then-
we're down to 7 minutes or so because we need a break before 6 o'clock. Should we look at the Dana real quick?
Yeah. Okay, so Wendy, do you want to switch back to the slide? I guess I could stop sharing. Hold on, let me just go back. How do I stop sharing? Oh, stop sharing. There you go.
Aviation.
So you can just advance to the next. Yeah.
Go past these.
Yeah, I think they just want to see the Dana, the middle school site, right? What we're doing there. Right here. So, okay, yeah. So then here we are showing because most of the facility is in good condition, and so we're showing no work there except for the implementation of collaboration areas in the classroom wings where they would share this breakout type of space. And then you'll see in the white boxes there some additions to additional classrooms, science lab for 6th graders, and then also the expansion of to make larger the PLTW, music, as well as art room space, and then creating 2 fitness spaces versus currently they just have 1.
Would that be the purple sections with the little lines through it?
Yeah, that's showing like a reconfiguration of existing space. So we would make 2 fitness areas out of that. Currently, 1 is a music room, and then the one on the south is a CrossFit type of space. Yeah, and so that music room would move out into an addition to the NPR building there, and then expanding those 3 programs because they're very popular at the school.
Israel, can I ask a quick question? Eileen, I think you're on, and Kiana, was there some concern from the Dana group about having music that close to the middle of campus for sound issues or anything like that?
There was.
They did. They asked about acoustics. They did ask whether or not like a separate standalone building could be built out here, closer to the science wing, like out there by this hard courts.
I mean, why not, right? Like in the bottom right-hand corner above the yellow, that outside area that's open.
Joe May, can you point
yeah.
so we're all looking at the same thing?
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone has, can somebody point at this or no?
Oh yeah, maybe Wendy, because she has control. Yeah, go down.
Wendy, go down.
You see the yellow buildings? Yeah, to the right.
Right above that? Yeah, so to your right, Wendy, that asphalt that's right there a little bit.
Yeah, like right there, around
I think
that
there would be a good
zone.
location for a building. Wouldn't
Yeah.
get in the way. Instead of in the middle of the campus, sure, why not?
Yeah, so we could, like, instead of doing an addition to the NPR building, build 2 new rooms there to be able to offset, and then maybe PLTW would take over some of the existing professional development room space, so that they could expand over there, but then music and whatever was over there could go in this other new building.
Could
Wendy,
part
do
of
you
that
mind
be
going
a
to-
clamshell for performing in the field?
Sorry?
I said, could part of that building be a clamshell, the back of it, if you have performances toward the field?
Oh, yeah, like it could open up and then have like an outdoor sort of like amphitheater kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly. It's right
Yeah.
there on the field.
Yeah. We've done music rooms with their like a roll up door or sliders or something like that.
I think we have the slope for it.
Yeah, we can shift that there.
Joe May, where is the PLTW expansion? I'm not sure. I mean, I know where the PLTW room, right where it says stage is at now, but what's the proposal?
Yeah.
Is it that yellow portion? Is that to be added?
So PLTW currently is in that yellow zone, but after we presented this plan and then the principals came back and gave us feedback, she had said that that room is currently too small because of the popularity of that program, and that she wants that room expanded. So then the part that I have hatched out that says music right now, if I were to build a new building for music, then that area could be given to PLTW, so that would work out really well. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. It's not shown on the plan currently because
I see.
we didn't have that information. Yeah.
Joe May,
Sounds good.
Joe May, along the same lines, when you look at that project Lead the Way yellow area, you see the area that's kind of white just to the west of that yellow area.
Yeah.
Yeah, that area there actually.
It's the overhang.
No, yeah, it's closer to the yellow area though, where you were at before, right there, that area. We might be able to do a little expansion there, kind of an outdoor fence area or something where they can expand into there as well. Actually, the project Lead the Way young engineers came and presented to the board and actually talked about how we could expand that little area for them. So that might be an area there too. It's kind of wasted space. It's not really utilized. So we might be able to use that area as well.
Yeah, that would be great because you already have a roof and you just put some walls up. Yeah.
Right. And we would give the
All right,
credit.
guys,
to
we
young
want to
engineers.
wrap this up. Is there any?
I have
comments?
one final comment, Israel. Since we're talking about the project Lead the Way here, I wanted to know, or for us to consider, do we have similar spaces in this master plan at Anza, Cabrillo, and Peter Burnett for project Lead the Way space? I'd like for us to consider that because I'm really interested in seeing the evolution of getting our students involved from very early on stages. and create a continuity or a pathway in the sciences from elementary all the way through high school, because Da Vinci already has a very strong robotics team. I mean, last year they won the world championship. They're part of the world championship team in the robotics, in the first robotics competition. And the last event that we held here at the Weisburn gym, they won first place wire to wire, 17-0 in that competition, and it was a regional. I know it's something we've talked about in the past, but since we're doing a master plan, I'd like to see that, see if there's just some good spaces where we can create to different levels, similar Project Lead the Way labs, to start training our students, boys and girls, give them an opportunity and get them interested, hook them, if you will, early into the sciences.
I think we would all be in agreement with that, Roger. It's a great idea. If you guys could incorporate that in, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, for all of the elementary schools, we have like shown reconfiguration for their existing computer lab areas, and those would turn into more like maker type of spaces that could incorporate that type of program in there for sure.
Israel had one quick comment.
Excellent.
Jomay, Rick, and Jim, I just wanted to thank you for your work on this master planning and really the entire process. I was a part of it. And one of the things I did want to mention to everybody on the board is going through this process is the feedback that we got from all the stakeholders, which included staff, community members, and so forth, is everyone's pretty much pleased and very happy with the current facilities we have. And one of the things that you can see from Cabrillo, Dana, Burnett, and Anza is that a lot of the wishes they desire are really utilizing existing spaces. So there isn't really much expansion. It's really just some conversions and so forth. So it just goes to show that they're pretty pleased with the facilities. And obviously, I think today we made a lot of progress on how we can utilize the Del Air and Aviation and 135th. So just wanted to thank you, but thank you all three.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Much
All right.
appreciated.
Thank you.
Guys, if you could take
then we-
a 5-minute break and then come back for the 6 o'clock. And make sure you click on the next meeting, right?
Correct.
We'll see if I can get there.
You should stay on.
What, Wendy, it's not this one, right? We got to click out and click back.
Yeah, there's a
Correct.
separate link.
There's another link.
The separate link. Thank you.
And Wendy, I'm hosting that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Truly
Joanne.
appreciate
Thank you.
all your time.
All right.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Jomay, Rick,
Thank you, everyone.
Jim. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
So
you.
Blake will touch
Hold on.
base on next steps and stuff later.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
How do I leave?
Hey, Quan, how do I leave?